Dead men tell no tales, but their ships speak volumes. Welcome to the Cursed Compass, where we explore the darkest maritime mysteries. In May 1999, a team of salvage divers descended 100 feet into the South China Sea. On the seabed, they found a sprawling 138-foot-long mound consisting entirely of white porcelain. As the silt was cleared, the divers found that the porcelain was not the only thing preserved. Skeletal remains lay scattered among the hundreds of thousands of teacups and bowls, hundreds of victims resting exactly where they had fallen. The modern salvage crew, consisting largely of Indonesian and Chinese divers, refused to touch the human bones. Believing that disturbing the dead would invite a curse, they left the remains of the passengers untouched and exactly as they were found. The Tek Sing ranks among history's deadliest shipwrecks, with a loss of life exceeding that of the Titanic. However, since its rediscovery, the ship has been defined primarily by the multi-million-dollar cargo it carried. The journey began in 1822 in Amoy, China. Facing severe economic hardship, 1,600 citizens boarded the ship, hoping to secure work in the sugarcane fields of Java. These were impoverished men, women, and children seeking a better life. They boarded the junk as deck passengers, carrying only their essential belongings for the voyage south. They were traveling on the Tek Sing, or the True Star. It was a massive, three-masted ocean-going junk, weighing 1,000 tons and measuring 160 feet in length. Stowed beneath the passengers were 350,000 pieces of Dewa export porcelain, along with vats of mercury and heavy iron cannons. The combination of 1,600 people crowded onto the decks of a wooden hull, weighed down by hundreds of tons of ceramics, made the vessel incredibly difficult to handle. Any structural failure would leave the crew with no way to maintain buoyancy. A month into the voyage, Captain Io Tauco decided to abandon the standard safe route. In an effort to save time, he steered the heavily laden junk toward a dangerous and uncharted shortcut. This path took the Tek Sing through the Gaspar Strait between the Bangka and Belitung Islands, notorious for hidden shoals. On February 6th, the ship approached the Belvedere Reef in darkness. The captain continued at speed, unaware of the jagged coral beneath the surface. The Tek Sing struck the reef with enough force to breach the wooden hull. Water flooded the lower compartments, and the ship quickly began to list. Because the vessel was weighted down by 1,000 tons of dense ceramics, it lacked any natural buoyancy once flooded. The junk sank to the bottom in under an hour, giving the 1,600 people on board no time to coordinate an escape. Most of the passengers were sleeping on the open decks when they were suddenly plunged into the dark water. In the chaos, they were forced to cling to shards of wood and scattered cargo. When the Titanic sank in 1912, 1,500 people died. The Tek Sing had a similar number of people in the water, but with no lifeboats or modern distress signals, their chances of survival were much lower. The next morning, a British East Indiaman called the Indiana sailed into the Gaspar Strait and encountered a massive debris field. The crew found hundreds of survivors clinging to wreckage and pieces of floating porcelain. Captain James Pearl ordered an immediate rescue operation. His crew worked throughout the day, eventually pulling 190 survivors from the sea. A second, smaller rescue was carried out by a passing Chinese vessel, which managed to save another 18 people. Out of the 1,600 who had boarded in Amoy, more than 1,400 people were swallowed by the sea. A single shortcut had resulted in one of the deadliest maritime catastrophes in history. For 170 years, the tragedy of the Tek Sing was almost entirely forgotten outside of its local region. A brief entry in an 1848 hydrographic handbook provided the only record of the site. It noted that a large junk had been lost near the Belvedere Shoals in the early 19th century. In 1999, Marine salvor Mike Hatcher used that single line of text to pinpoint the coordinates of the wreck. The recovery was extraordinary. Divers extracted 350,000 pieces of perfectly preserved blue and white porcelain manufactured in the kilns of Dewa. In November 2000, the salvaged items were brought to Nagel auctions in Stuttgart, Germany. The event attracted collectors from around the world. The sale brought in over $10 million. It remains the largest and most valuable cache of Chinese porcelain ever recovered from the sea. This commercial success stands in sharp contrast to the human remains that still rest on the seabed. While the porcelain was cleaned and sold to the highest bidders, The 1,400 victims remain 100 feet below the waves, exactly where they died 2 centuries ago. Following the fears of the men who found them, the gravesite remains undisturbed, frozen in time.